Hello, I'm Silicon Thaumaturgy, and welcome to Model of the Week. And no, I don't mean Kate Upton. Since I'm a firm believer in democracy, the Model of the Week is whatever had the most downloads that week on Civitai, which, when I checked on May 17th, was Lyriel, which recently got updated to version 1.6. This will be a bit more relaxed than my regular content, but I will still be doing extensive testing on the model. But first, let's look at the official documentation for the model to see what it says it can do, look at some pretty pictures, and identify the settings for testing. Per the model description, it says it's good at portraits and full-length anime photos plus fantastical landscapes. First, portraits and pictures of people are indeed beautiful. The model default seems to be head and shoulder style portraits, which will usually occur unless you have something in your prompt telling the model otherwise. Like many models these days, it has quite a bit of same face going on. So, if you want to make distinct characters, you will need to be light with the negative embeddings and use embeddings or LoRa's to get specific facial features. As advertised, landscapes are good, with lots of depth, color, and vibrancy, and this will often be noticeable in portraits as well. Modern technology, science fiction, and fantasy all seem to work well when prompted for. One thing that came as quite a surprise is that prompts for building interiors are really good and shockingly realistic considering most of the outputs for the model are stylized. I also thought that outputs for plants were pretty strong too, especially flowers. On the other hand, animals except for really common ones like cats and dogs seem to have a lot of coherency issues, so I wasn't a fan. Vehicles and spaceships had coherency issues too. While this is an issue shared by many other models, this can somewhat limit the utility of the model with science fiction or modern subjects. Similarly, while the textures and details on macro subjects were good, they also suffered from a lack of coherency. Now that we've looked at a bunch of pretty pictures, let's get into the nitty-gritty of this model, the settings, and then quality testing. The model description recommends using DPM++2 mkeras at 25 to 35 steps, so that's what I'll use for my testing. It also says to set clip skip to 2. Overall, there didn't seem to be much of a quality difference between the two besides a bit of twinning at clip skip 2. So I kept mine at clip skip 1. But you do you. I'm not your dad. The description does not say a VAE is baked in, nor is a specific VAE recommended. So I tested out 4 different VAEs in the model. It seemed pretty flexible here, with the exception that the KL F8 Anime VAE looked oversaturated with unnatural colors. So I decided to go with the basic Stable Diffusion VAE, which has MSE 840,000-EMA in the name. Finally, the model description says mile-long prompts are not required, so I adopted the same philosophy for the negative prompt. I started with a basic worst quality, low quality negative prompt, then tested out some negative embeddings and combinations of those. I ended up only selecting the bad artist negative embedding because all the others seemed to decrease the ability of the model to accurately show facial features from celebrities and textual inversions. Finally, for all my testing, I performed high-res fix with an upscale of 1.5 and 0.3 denoising and the 4x ultra-sharp upscaler to give it a chance to fix faces and add some extra details. For quality testing, I generated 100 512 by 768 images for humans, half male and half female. I inspected all these for certain defects: bad hands, bad anatomy, bad faces, and twinning. Overall, anatomy excluding hands was very good. I only saw defects in 6 out of 100 test photos. Among the quality test images which use a vertical resolution, twinning was not a problem, appearing less than 5% of the time. I also made some test images in approximately 16:9 aspect ratio, and twinning was worse, but still okay, with around 25% of images impacted. Faces were good, especially up close, but Lyriel, like many models, tended to struggle more when the face is further away. Overall, faces were good around 80% of the time, though invoking styles or celebrities seems to make them worse. Now, hands. As we know, hands are the arch nemesis of AI art, and while this model did pretty well by those standards, there were still substantial problems. I broke this down into major and minor failures, with major being immediately noticeable and minor requiring me to inspect and count fingers to notice. Major defects on hands occurred approximately 25% of the time, and minor defects occurred a further 30% of the time, leaving passing hands at around 45%. This can definitely be improved with negative embeddings, but I want to give an evaluation of the model's base capabilities without them. Next, I'm going to cover some more qualitative aspects of the model: styles, artists, and celebrities. Invoking celebrities worked across all those I tested, though many of them ended up looking deformed or noodly looking. This could be related to the celebrity being the only thing in my prompt, though who knows. Textual inversions seem to convey likeness better and without distortion, so that would be the preferred method for getting particular features on a person. Invoking art styles, like anime or impressionist paintings, was pretty bad. More cartoonish styles had lots of issues with the face. Painted styles and some photographic styles generally worked better, but often suffered from frames or other things related to the medium in the output. Invoking artists worked much better, and I recommend using that over trying to invoke styles. Once again, painted and modern styles seem to work best, with cartoon and photographic styles degrading the quality of the image. However, a lot of the time, colors and content, like showing a person in period clothing using that artist's particular color palette, were transferred instead of using the actual style of the medium, like brushstrokes and abstraction. Another common defect in the model is that text occurs a lot. The good news is that this text is usually very small in proportion to the image. Interestingly, the text often has coherent letters, though they don't form actual words. Move over, Deep Floyd, Lyriel's in town. Now, this is a family-friendly channel, so there are topics I won't talk about. That said, I know a significant portion of my audience and the AI community as a whole tend to be quite interested in those big bouncy topics. So let's call this the Stable Diffusion Parental Review Board. Since a gentleman like myself would never consider defiling Stable Diffusion with lascivious prompts, I'm just going to measure how often the model puts out suggestive or inappropriate content without prompting, so my more wholesome audience members know what they're getting into. So, I might have discovered a typo in the model name. Instead of a Y, there was probably supposed to be 2 E's, because the male gaze is super strong with this one. Out of 50 female results, 20, or around 40%, were what I would consider to be suggestive, with more that were borderline. Men were not spared though, since I considered almost 20% of results for men to be suggestive as well. Unlike many models, Lyriel doesn't try to mimic the shape of certain anatomical features on top of clothing, so that is definitely something in favor of family friendliness. I had a couple of inappropriate results, but all but one was because I tested an artist that had inappropriate content in their body of work. So that's on me. Overall, I don't think Lyriel quite deserves an R rating, but given the sheer volume of suggestive content, I don't think it qualifies as family friendly either. So, I'm going to give it a PG-13 with an extra 3 quagmires. Overall, it kind of reminds me of a waifu bait gatcha game, except instead of paying money, you pay for electricity. Well, unless you don't own a GPU and have to pay for rolls, credits. Overall, Lyriel is a model that specializes in portraying people and does that exceptionally well. Subject matter other than landscapes, plants, and buildings is somewhat limited, but in my opinion, the model delivers what it promises and then some. Human figures have relatively few defects other than hands. A good chunk of those defects that occurred during testing is probably due to the other major drawback for the model, which is that it's not flexible with regard to style. Trying to push it towards realistic painted styles is possible, and photographic styles can turn out okay, but everything else is going to severely degrade the quality. Luckily, referencing artists seems to have less influence on style and more influence on color and content, so painters and photographers can still be used in that way. The model isn't quite family friendly since it leans towards suggestive content, but generally it keeps its pants on. If this video gave you a good feel for the capabilities of this model, or you just like looking at all the pretty pictures, like and subscribe to support the channel. As many of you know, I have very high standards for the amount of testing I want to do before releasing a deep dive video. They also tend to be quite serious and don't leave much room to have fun with things. I thought this would be an interesting format to try that is both informative but lighter than my other videos. I don't think I would actually do this every week, but would be the kind of video I could produce quickly while performing all the testing for those deep dives. So, let me know what you think. Till next time.